When I was younger, I was always searching for a specific kind of zombie game. One that was part strategy, part management, and part turn-based combat. I spent years looking for a game that met all this criteria. I played flash games like Rebuild, and terrible games like Fort Zombie, or more action-oriented games like State of Decay. Then in 2014, Dead State was released, a game that met all of my criteria. On release, it was buggy, broken, and I loved it. So today, let's take a look at what may be the best zombie game ever made. Our story begins with the player enjoying a simple plane ride, when we experience some turbulence and the plane crashes. You're immediately thrown into a very quick tutorial, how to loot, how to equip, and how to fight before you finally escape the wreckage and blackout. We wake up in a basement and confronted with the first of many dialogue options. We can select who was on the plane with us, and is now deceased. This doesn't have much impact outside of some conversations with characters throughout the game. We then have to make another choice. We have to go looking for medicine to treat some of the other survivors from the plane. We're bringing the cop Joel with us, but must choose between Anita, a more strength-focused character, or her daughter Renee, who has some medical skill. This is a good opportunity to talk about skills and character creation. In Dead State, there are 2 sets of attributes, 4 stats and 8 skills. Stats are your usual thing like strength, agility, vigor, and perspective. Skills are more specialist things like melee, range, leadership, and mechanical as examples. For your main characters, skills also come with special perks. The leadership skill, for example, gives you access to powerful in-battle abilities like Go, which allows an ally to act immediately, or Get Up, which revives any downed allies, or the survival skill, which has perks which increase your movement speed on the map, or allow allied dogs to appear and join the fight. For this run, our protagonist will be borderline incompetent, with me putting nearly all stat points into agility and every skill point into leadership and negotiation, bar 2 points which I put in survival for a movement speed boost on the world map. When creating your character, you can upload a photo for your character's portrait. Instead of using this hipster-looking guy, I use my imp persona. Since I spend most of the game bullying people and using a pitchfork, it's thematically appropriate. With our character established, I choose to bring Anita along after all. You don't need to heal if you don't get hit. And with how weak our protagonist is, we need someone who can actually fight. We'll talk more about how the base works later. For now, it's time to take stock of our equipment. We find 1 kitchen knife and a pipe wrench. Not exactly much of an arsenal, but it'll have to do. Luckily, our companions start with their own weapons, Joel with a police baton and pistol, and Anita with a baseball bat. Surely that's enough to kill anything that moves. With the stock taking done, we head for our first expedition. Here, we are introduced to the world map. In the center, our base of operations. As we explore, more and more locations will appear on the map. For now, we only have a single location to explore, Llano Commercial, which we head for. Welcome to the zombie apocalypse, gentlemen. Once you enter a map in Dead State, gameplay is divided into 2 parts. A real-time exploration phase, not unlike a CRPG, where you gather items and resources. These resources are broken up into food, luxury goods, antibiotics, and fuel, and hold no practical purpose other than being donated to your shelter. On the other hand, we have more usable items like weapons, armor, and healing items. Once we encounter an enemy, the game transitions into a turn-based strategy. In this first map, there are a small amount of zombies, but they're a massive threat, so let's take the chance to talk about them. Every zombie in Dead State is fundamentally the same. There are no runners, spitters, chargers, or other special infected. There are only 2 types here, zombies and crawlers. They both function largely the same. Despite this, zombies never stop being a threat in this game, for a few reasons. Number 1, sound. All characters in the game produce sound when they attack, move, or take damage, and zombies are of course attracted to sound. Firing a gun is likely to bring every zombie from every corner of the map bearing down on you. Even worse, at high levels of noise, zombies will begin to spawn on the edges of the map and head for the source of the noise. You can actually manipulate zombies in this way, creating noise to lure them to locations, even luring them to human enemies. The second thing that makes zombies a threat is how they propagate. Every human in the game, except for the protagonist unless you enable the option, can be infected. Being infected is a permanent status effect. There is no cure for the disease. The only thing you can do is delay the transformation into a zombie, but we'll talk about that a little later. With all that said, fighting zombies is dangerous. A lucky hit from a zombie can easily infect a character, especially early in the game when unarmored and weak. So you approach the level cautiously, ambushing zombies from behind and trying to fight them one at a time. This culminates in a battle with 3 zombies outside of a diner. Here we can talk about status effects and weapon abilities. Like any good game, Dead State has status effects, with weapons having a variety of different abilities. Take a baseball bat. It has 3 different attack modes: basic attack, push, and swing. Basic attack is self-explanatory, while push, of course, has a high chance of causing the knockback effect. And swing is a wide arcing attack that causes damage to targets next to the attacked character. All of its attacks have a chance to cause the dizzy effect. Now, when it comes to zombies, they're immune to almost every status effect in the game. Being dead, they can't be dizzied or poisoned, but there's one thing they are vulnerable to: being crippled. Crippling a zombie is the only way other than killing it to render it disabled. A crippled zombie simply cannot attack, making weapons like axes, which can apply the cripple effect, very useful. Once we dispatch the zombies outside of the diner, we enter and are confronted with our first human enemy, named Cindy. Humans are different to zombies in that they of course use weapons, can be affected by every status effect, can panic, and when their health drops to 0, they don't die. Instead, they're knocked down and can be revived or eaten if zombies get their hands on them. Cindy comes swinging at us with a screwdriver, so we beat her down. A pity, but it had to be done. But then, the real horror of this game kicks in. Cindy was infected, her corpse gets back up, and we have to kill her all over again. This is one of the problems with fighting human enemies. Any one of them could be infected, so you can't let your guard down even after they die. With that done, we've officially cleared our first zone. We gather all the loot and head to the exit. With the success of our first expedition, I decide to hit another location before we head home. Downtown Splendid. Here we come face to face with one of the many bandit groups in Dead State. Looters. Looters are poorly armed and armoured, and in this level there are 4 of them. Things go quite well until we come to the last looter. Anita takes a lot of damage and panics, fleeing the fight. With her running for her life, now is the perfect time to talk about one of Dead State's most dangerous mechanics: panic. Every living creature in the game other than the protagonist has a hidden terror threshold, which, when passed, will cause the panicked status effect to trigger for that character. There are 2 things that can cause horror. Damage. This is the simplest one. Once a character's health drops below a certain level, they panic. The other cause is presence of the dead. Zombies are unsettling creatures, and being in close proximity to them would scare anyone. The longer a character spends with a large amount of zombies close to them, the likelier they are to panic. When a character panics, they disengage from combat and run in a random direction, and continue to run for a few turns before the panic wears off. This of course can be disastrous. Someone can panic and run right into a horde of zombies, and just because panic wears off doesn't mean the symptoms that led to it triggering are gone. This is one of the reasons I invested most of my skill points into leadership, to gain the Don't Panic skill, which immediately ends the effect of panic on your allies and stops it from triggering for a few turns. Alright, back to the battle. With Anita running off, I trigger my Don't Panic ability to call her back into the fight. But it's too late. The looter has already turned his attention to Joel, landing a critical hit that puts him into the down state. He then pulls out his shotgun and takes a shot at Anita. Luckily, he misses, and the noise only hits 50, too low for zombies to spawn. Despite my 0 combat skills, I managed to land a lucky hit and finish the looter off. The fight is over, but Joel is still on the ground, so while I patch him up, let's talk about the down state and why healing in this game is never quite that simple. When a character is down, they can't attack or move and will slowly bleed out. They can be finished off by enemies, or worse, if a zombie gets to them, they're instantly killed and reanimated as one of the horde. But here's the real kicker and the main disadvantage of getting down. Whenever you heal a character in the field, their maximum health is permanently lowered until they rest back at base. This creates a terrifying downward spiral. Why? Because panic isn't based on the health percentage, it's based on a flat number. So, if a character panics at 30 health, they will still panic at 30 health, even if that is now their maximum. Every injury makes them even more fragile and more likely to break in a fight, turning a wounded veteran into a dangerous liability. With the last looter slain, we're free to loot the zone. This leads to us coming across the 2 in-level obstacles that exist in Dead State: locked doors and alarms. Locked doors can of course be picked, but we lack some with a high mechanical skill, so we resort to brute force. This creates noise, but as we've killed everything in the level, there's no problem. As long as we wait a little before every strike of the door and allow noise to dissipate, we can avoid the loudness going above the threshold that causes zombies to spawn. Alarms are a little more of a serious problem. They require points in science to disarm, and we lack that. We could just go in and let the alarm go off, But unlike with hitting a door, an alarm will blare for a while and we can't let the noise dissipate. In short, zombies will begin to spawn. And with Joel and Anita close to death, I decide to withdraw with our loot. Zones are consistent, so when we come back, everything will stay as we left it, so we can loot it at our leisure. We return back to base, our packs laden with loot, which is a good time to talk about how each of the resources work. Food is easy to understand. Every member of your community consumes food, with humans consuming 3 units of food a day and animals consuming a lot less. As you can imagine, running out of food will lead to big problems. Many characters will refuse to work, sub-leaders will lose respect, potentially causing a mutiny, and of course, people will start to starve. Morale is the next resource. No one is happy to be in the zombie apocalypse, even at the best of times, and so morale will decrease every day based on the amount of people in your shelter and their mood. The only way to increase morale is to gather luxury goods, to offset the constantly decreasing morale. If morale ever falls to a very low level, you lose the game outright. Next we have antibiotics. If anyone becomes infected, they will need 1 unit of antibiotics a day to stave off the infection, or they will turn and have to be put down. The last resource is fuel. Your shelter requires fuel every day to keep running, and many upgrades in the shelter also require fuel, like the infirmary for example, which simply won't function without fuel. You can also acquire a car for travel on the world map, which also requires fuel. But bringing back supplies does more than just keep your shelter running and survivors alive. It's how your protagonist gets stronger. Unlike most RPGs, you don't gain XP from fighting and killing. Instead, you gain skill and stat points from bringing back precious supplies, which reinforce the game's core theme. This is a game about surviving the apocalypse, not simply killing zombies and looters to level up. With our supplies stocked, we rest and transition to day 2. At the end of each day, we get a shelter summary screen which details the changes in food, morale, antibiotics, and fuel. At the start of a new day, many events can trigger. Here we have Renee reacting to us taking her mother out yesterday, asking us not to take her outside. Due to our high negotiation skill, we can agree to keep her inside today on the condition that Renee takes her place. She agrees, and so that's one problem solved. Today, the building system for the shelter comes online and we can start constructing facilities using parts, which are a simple crafting resource we can find in many locations. Since Anita won't be leaving today, I assign her and the other member of our community, Davis, to repair the fence around the school and repair the refrigerator. The fence will of course keep out zombies, while the fridge will preserve fresh food, stopping it from rotting. The game plan for today is to recruit some survivors, and luckily, I know exactly where to find some. Taking Joel and Renee, we head east from Splendid, ignoring every location we come across until we get a random encounter. Say hello to Craig and Karen. They are both fleeing from a military-run shelter and are looking for a new home. We easily convince them to join our motley crew. We could turn back now, but instead we continue on east until we come to the Carmichael Garage. Here we find another recruitable companion, the car-obsessed savant Jody. He's useless at everything other than mechanics, but his mechanical skill is so good he's definitely worth recruiting. With 3 new companions recruited, we head home. Unfortunately, we spent too long outside, and so it became night. If you stay out after dark, the chance of a negative encounter increases. Low visibility decreases your character's accuracy, and characters become fatigued, which decreases their accuracy and dodge by 25%, a massive debuff. Now we settle into the game's main gameplay loop. We leave our shelter every day and raid locations, looking for supplies and resources that we can then use to maintain our community and build new structures, while staying on the lookout for more companions we can recruit. So let's talk a little about companions. Every companion has a storyline and events associated with them. Some are rather simple, like Renee and her mother Anita, who mainly have events related to each other. They'll react if the other gets infected or dies. For example, if Anita gets infected, she will request that Renee is permanently removed from the combat roster, and if you accept, Renee will be unavailable for forays into the hostile world. Other characters have more extreme events. Take a character called Max. He shows up your shelter one day, covered in blood, and collapses, only awaking on day 9. Many characters are uncomfortable with his presence and will ask you to keep him in check. If you fail to improve Max's mood, he will simply leave the shelter one day without warning, never to return. Whereas if you improve his mood by supplying him with sleeping pills and building a gym, he will open up and reveal the backstory that has caused him to reach this crazed state. Max was a teacher at a school together with his fiancée. One day, an infected wandered onto the campus and bit one of the teachers. Max locked the children and teachers together in a classroom to keep them safe while he called the police. When he came back, the children, teachers, and his fiancée had turned and were eating each other. This caused Max to experience a break with reality, and so he is simply killing every zombie he comes across while looking for a place to die, We can choose to encourage him to overcome his trauma, which results in him losing his unhinged trait, which causes -5 morale a day. Or we can tell him the only way for him to atone is by killing more zombies, in which case he gains the Undead Nightmare trait, which results in him doing an extra 15% of damage to all undead permanently. It's pretty easy to see which trait is better. Morale is rather easy to manage, while a flat damage boost is hard to turn down. But the morally good choice here is to help Max overcome his problem, and that's one thing this game does rather well. The good choices are usually not optimal, and if you try to play as a nice and friendly guy, a lot of bad things will happen. Some people have to be kept on a short leash, and when a character starts acting in a creepy, paranoid, or psychotic manner, as leader of the community, you need to handle it, or there will be consequences. And this style of brilliant, morally grey writing shouldn't be a surprise. After all, one of the lead writers on Dead State was Brian Mitsoda, who many will know as one of the masterminds behind the cult classic Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. The focus on complex characters and difficult choices is baked directly into this game's DNA. On day 24, a craftswoman named Regina shows up at the gate and requests sanctuary. She's cryptic about why she wants to join, but we soon find out. 2 days later, on day 26, a group of bikers called the Coyotes show up at the gate and demand we hand over Regina. They give us 3 days to decide before they come to collect her. This triggers a crisis event. These events are serious choices that the community has to make. Every sub-leader within the community gathers, gives us their view, and then a choice must be made. There are a maximum of 6 sub-leaders: Vic, one of the last police officers, Paul, a former soldier, Lloyd, a pilot, Regina, the former Coyote, Todd, the priest, and Sandy, the politician. Each of these people represents a segment of your community and will decide the reaction of that segment to your choices. In this case, things are pretty split down the middle. Paul, Lloyd, and Regina all advocate destroying the Coyotes, saying that negotiating with violent gangs is pointless, while Vic, Todd, and Sandy prefer to hand over Regina to avoid a conflict. I decide to take the fight to the Coyotes. Despite the split vote, all of the opposing sub-leaders respect me enough to support my decision. Let's take a moment to talk about sub-leaders and respect. As I mentioned, there are 6 sub-leaders in the game. They can't be replaced or demoted. If they die or aren't recruited, the voter bloc they represent will dissolve, and the members will vote based on their mood, with higher mood characters voting your way, while lower mood characters will vote against. Respect is a hidden mechanic. Every sub-leader has a level of respect for you based on various factors: how you treat them in dialogue, if they have agreed with your choices in the past, and whether they owe you a favour. As you can't see a character's respect, you can only vaguely guess. For example, as all leaders that disagree with me in this vote respected my decision, I can say I had a high level of respect with each of them. But now I have spent some of their respect to mitigate the fallout of that decision. Managing respect is rather difficult, as you can't directly influence it outside of attempts to bribe the sub-leaders, and if respect falls low, the sub-leader will attempt to mutiny. This triggers a vote, which if you lose, the game ends. If a sub-leader starts to become a problem in this way, they could always have an accident of some kind. We are living in the apocalypse after all. With the decision made, I begin preparing for war with the Coyotes. I plan to strike them before they return and demand Regina. We won't experience any fallout to refusing their demands if they don't exist after all. Since this is going to be a large human battle, guns are a necessity, which means zombies will be a problem, but I plan to use them to our advantage. For this expedition, I choose to bring Bud, a Vietnam vet with good range skill and a bonus with rifles. He'll be our sniper. Then I bring Paul, our veteran, equipped with an MS-4 rifle. Regina with a silenced pistol and steel bat, and me also with a silenced pistol and my trusty pitchfork. Our plan is simple. The Coyote base is a fenced-off compound, so we have to take advantage of that. Using Bud to snipe the sentries through the fence, then running around the fence to its entrance, where I give it a slight tap. The zombies, who are already active due to the gunshots, swarm the gate, while the Coyotes inside the compound rush to the entrance. We stand back and allow the two forces to fight it out, and then swoop in and eliminate the winner. That's the Coyotes on the outside cleared. Now we simply have to deal with the ones in the main building, which ends up being a rather simple affair. And with that, the Coyote leadership is annihilated. They no longer pose a threat. We loot their base and return home triumphant. With the Coyotes defeated, the game unfortunately enters its worst phase. After this point, there are no direct threats. There are, of course, other factions. The police remnants in the northwest, the militia in the south, mercenaries occupying Austin, and military remnants scattered around. Unfortunately, none of them directly threaten your base like the Coyotes do, and fighting them is optional. We of course take out the militia and mercenaries in very large-scale battles. The mercenaries are based in what is essentially the game's final dungeon, an optional location of multiple floors filled with mercs, using the best weapons and armor in the game, a great if optional final boss. But the real problem is the game essentially goes on too long. I had cleared out most of the map by day 50. Unfortunately, you have to wait until day 86 to trigger the endgame. This means a lot of skipping time. It also means events that take place in the late game have less impact because you're kind of rushing through them to get to the end. On day 86, a man named Walter shows up at your base and informs you that a local nuclear power plant has become unstable and a meltdown is imminent. The best option is to escape the area. There are a few ways to escape. If you have a good relationship with the military, you can join them and have everyone evacuate in exchange for you joining the military. You can build a battle bus and drive out of the county in hopes of finding somewhere better. You can steal a helicopter and escape with only yourself, the pilot, and a few others, leaving most of your companions to die. Or, if you have the only plane pilot in the game, you can get everyone on board and fly out of the country, heading for the Caribbean. Surely there's less zombies there, right? We opt for the plane option, and after a few days repairing it, we begin departure. Except a bunch of mercenaries show up and demand we hand over the plane, and so begins the final battle, which is unfortunately rather underwhelming. There are no zombies, just you and a bunch of mercs fighting out on the tarmac. What is interesting is that some of the companions can join you in the final battle outside of your main squad. For example, Max and Bud and a few others joined me in the final fight. What's annoying about this is you don't know who's going to join you unless you reload a save, or have prior knowledge. And so these characters are unlikely to be well equipped. Either way, we hold off the mercs long enough for the plane to launch and get our final choice. We can choose to send the plane off without us in a last act of heroism, or we can simply get on the plane. Not sure why this is even an option, but it's nice to have. After that, we fly into the sunset and credits roll at a rather low frame rate. Do I recommend playing this game? Not really. It's still a rather buggy game, with lots of random crashes, but more than that, it's a game for a very specific sort of person. Someone who enjoys slowly and methodically clearing zones, fighting cautiously and rarely using guns. It's for someone who wants to play a game which blends all aspects of the zombie apocalypse together, managing food and other resources as well as your survivors and their many problems. It's definitely not for people that want fast, action-oriented gameplay and a large open world to build in. But despite its flaws, there is no game really like this out there. For that reason alone, this is my favourite zombie game, and the only zombie game I seem to keep coming back to even after 11 years since its release. My only real problems with the game outside of the crashes is quality of life stuff. There are a lot of small things that make the game tedious, like having to move each individual item to your car's trunk, or the screen for equipping allies being simply terrible to use, where you have to select your ally's name from a list which grows rather large in the late game and is also rather small. But despite all that, I love the game. Even now, sitting here after finishing a playthrough, I wish there was more. But unfortunately, there isn't. The developer no longer exists. Despite another team working on a spiritual successor, who knows whether that game will capture the magic of this title. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. If you want to play this game for yourself, it regularly goes on sale from its full price of £15, $20 or €20, down to £3.75 or $5 or €5. The game is available on both Steam and GOG, and even has a demo on Steam for you to try, though I doubt it's been properly maintained. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, don't hesitate to like and or subscribe, and tell me your thoughts about the game or video in the comments. For my next video, well, there's a Steam Next Fest currently on, and some demos I want to show off, so see you then.